Welcome to Open Mic with Mike Balsom on Giant TV. I'm your host for this show, and each show will look at the people involved in the political scene in Niagara. We'll discuss the issues that are getting attention, but also the issues that maybe should be getting some attention across the region. And today we kick off our very first show with two special guests, two brand new city councilors in the city of Welland. I'd like to welcome to my left Adam Moote, 34 years old. Adam works for the Armstrong Strategies Group. He is we call it government relations. Is that what you specialize in?
It's a portion of what I do. So I'm a public affairs consultant. So we could create digital campaigns, any kind of campaign really, government lobbying. If you have any challenges with certain legislation, we could facilitate some options on how to meet with other levels of government to facilitate those changes.
So you bring with yourself some political background, some political theory, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. Beside Adam, we have the youngest member of Welland City Council, 24 years old currently. I believe you were 23 when you were running. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Spinosa, owner of the Black Sheep Lounge, and they're currently closed while we're taping this program because of, we're not going to talk about that incident. I'm sure most people know about it, but you were kind enough to bring some of your coffee, and it's great coffee, don't you think, Adam?
Yeah, it's delicious. It's hot. One of your colleagues over there had a real zip of it because it's black, so... Yeah.
So welcome, gentlemen. And although you're new to City Council, neither one of you new to actually being involved in the city. I believe you were on the Heritage Council or currently on the Heritage Advisory Committee?
Yeah, I was on the Heritage Advisory Committee, I think, from 2013 to 2015.
Now, Lucas, over to you. I mean, visually, your appearance obviously has shaken things up a little bit, I would think, at City Council. We're used to a lot of gray hair on City Council. We're not used to hair sitting up like that. Well, yeah, you're on your way. You're on your way.
I could speak to that.
But let's talk about a 23-year-old at the time running for City Council. Did people wonder why you were doing it? Did people think you were a little nuts to get involved at that young age?
I think it's a yes and a no to answer that question. My dad, growing up working in a bakery, didn't matter what age we were, we had to work. He pushed us to work hard and go after the things we wanted to do. And so when I was 19 is when I bought the building for the Black Sheep, and people thought that was young. I was 21 when I opened, and then 3.5 years later, here we are with council. So for me, it didn't seem like such a barrier. I was more concerned about the way that I looked than my age. But luckily for me, it really helped me stand out from a lot of the other candidates, because when I went to the door, a lot of people are like, no, I don't want the Kool-Aid you're selling, right? So it was definitely a good way to catch people's attention, and then hopefully have them hear what I was trying to get across, and then vice versa for me to hear what they wanted to get across.
Tell me about your campaign. What did you focus on?
It was a couple things. So it was multifaceted. I definitely targeted the doors very heavily. There's 4,200 houses, give or take a few in Ward 3. I hit every single one 3 times. It took me 8 weeks of steady door knocking to do it. But then I also did a pretty heavy social media campaign. And a lot of people thought that was a bit of a waste of time because of the fact that a lot of the voting demographic doesn't use online strategies for voting. But the difference is their grandkids do, and their kids do, and they talk, right? It's election season, and the grandparents bring that up. Hey, there's no one to vote for in my area. And then little Jane's like, well, no, yes, there is. Lucas is good. And they show him the video. So it gets there. The message gets across. So I just didn't leave any avenue undiscovered.
Now, Adam mentioned that he sort of waited for an opportunity, an incumbent didn't run, but you didn't wait for that.
No.
And you ended up knocking off an incumbent and leading the other incumbent who was reelected.
Yes.
Shocked at that?
Definitely. I'm telling you, I'm not someone who is a stressor. I don't crumple under pressure very often. And the day of the election, I think, is when this turned from a golf ball to a baseball on the top of my head, because I was pulling it out. I was freaking out. And usually I'm happy-go-lucky, positive. But my mom was like trying to make me not look like I wanted to die because I was so stressed out. And then the last numbers came in, and I was shocked that I was top overall. But it doesn't mean anything, It doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, it's a matter of what you're able to accomplish for people, right? So those numbers in 4 years, people could hate me if I do nothing, right? So it doesn't matter. It's the election is not even a fraction of what matters in politics.
Let's talk a little bit about the learning curve. Again, 2 new councilors. Adam, what was it like, with your first council meeting and, preparing for that meeting, looking at the agenda, maybe poring over some budget lines? Was it what you expected? I mean, you do have some experience on the political end of things, but you hadn't really at any time been responsible for things like creating that budget.
Right. So we don't necessarily create the budget. We look at the budget. The city staff does a great job.
But making recommendations.
Yeah, they make the recommendations. And I mean, there's lots of things you could go through that budget line by line, but I think that would be a waste of time. I'm not an accountant, so I have to trust that staff with all their designations know what they're doing. So, it's hard for me to go through line by line and say, what are you doing here, Mr. CFO, when, he does this for a living all day long, where I come in for a number of hours a week and, start questioning his integrity and his professionalism. I think that's a bad precedent. But I think, to your point, what it was like reading the agenda, it's not that difficult. There's a lot of information to take in. But at the end of the day, I think you do have to trust staff. And if you do catch things that are a little, wonky or don't make sense to you, it's okay to ask questions. But I think it's, you have to respect that they're doing the best job that they can. And every day I try to do the best job I can. Sometimes I make mistakes and, we're all human. And we just want to, do the best job we can.
But some people think councilors aren't human.
Right? Yeah, that's
Am I right?
Yeah.
So here's the question. You've got a 17-month-old daughter, I think you said?
That's right, yeah.
So a 17-month-old daughter at home who doesn't sleep all that well.
Yep.
Is your phone ringing off the hook already? People from your ward, wanting to touch base with you, wanting to ask you questions?
Yeah, for sure. So even during the election campaign, a number of people reached out to me just to see what I'm all about. Like Lucas, I'm a younger guy, but what do I have to offer? What vision do I have for the city? And basically, I would say to them, I want to live here for the next 50 years. God willing. I want to make this city what I want to live in. So, do things cost money? Yes. At the end of the day, I'm trying to be doing the best job that I can. I know I have to balance city life along with professional life, along with dad life. So wrapping it all into this tiny little package that is Adam Moote, I'm trying to figure out the best decision and the best way forward on all fronts. And I think I can manage that. It's just about finding a good balance.
Lucas, you formed this coffee club to get people together and to discuss issues and work together for solutions. Tell me about that.
For sure. So it's called the Welland Coffee Club. We started just about a year ago now. We took a couple months off for the winter. We were supposed to actually start this past Tuesday, but because of the accident at the cafe, we weren't able to do it this month. Next month for sure. But one of the things that the coffee club brought up, and this is a direct correlation from what people are looking for to seeing results, they wanted public pianos. They wanted some sort of public art project.
I read about that in the last agenda from
Yes.
the February 5th meeting. Very interesting. It's happened in Niagara Falls before. Some other cities have done the same thing, but it sounds like a great sort of focus for the downtown area and other areas.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the things for myself as an artist who grew up in Welland, it's difficult to find places to play music, especially if you don't have a lot of money, right? So my biggest thing was relaying or putting that on our group and saying, what did you guys want to see? And this was prior to council. Well, fast forward till now and I'm on it and I brought it up as a notice of motion. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, so it'll be coming up following Tuesday, not this Tuesday, but the next. And that's a real thing. So they asked for something and now it's being seen on paper and it has to be dealt with. Whether it passes or not is not in my control. Maybe if I can convince Adam before we leave, that's 2 votes. But, it's simple, easy. It doesn't cost anybody any money. And I think to Adam's point, when I our first meeting, I looked over at him and he's like, bylaw, this, that, the other, 2XZ. I'm like, bylaw, what? Like, I don't do that. My thing is that connection with people. And I think one of the more important things that we forget is that people a lot of the time just need to get things off their chest. They're upset. If you break it down, taxes are a very small portion of what your expenses are. You've got utilities and a mortgage and you've got your kids' university. There's a lot of things on your plate. So what I try to do when people have issues is say, okay, what's really the issue? What is it that you're not getting for your money that you're upset about? Because a lot of the time it's not the tax rate, it's what they're not getting for how much they're paying. So that's why communication is important. So if people don't talk to us, they don't let us know their ideas, then what we do is obsolete. And it's the same thing to Adam's point about the CFO. We aren't accountants, right? So that's why we have these people. Otherwise, we should resign on council and apply for the CFO job, and then we can get that if we're qualified, right? Our job is to make sure that the feel of the community is being addressed, listened to, and we move forward with that plan. But it's a very vague plan, right? It just has to be directional.
Right. Now, Lucas brings up a good point, Adam. You know, in politics, when you're serving your city, you have to look at what people want, but you also have to look at the cost of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's a little bit of a trade-off on both ends.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking with people, I remember during the campaign, I had a number of people speak to me about the size of our council. And my response was, I don't know. I've never ran. I've never sat on council. I don't know. Maybe we do have a large number of councillors. Maybe we don't have enough. I've come to the conclusion, after my 2 months, that 12 is not necessarily bad. Because you have 12 different perspectives, right? So if you have a smaller council, you have maybe, 6 people that are very aligned, but you're missing that demographic that might have elected a Lucas, so a youth vote,
right?
An arts and culture kind of vote. So for the amount of money that we are paid as councillors, it's a very small drop in the bucket. So I think that what I'm trying to get at is that it's a very unique job. It's a part-time job, but I think that at the end of the day, we're going to make the right decisions, and I hope that we could continue to have the public's trust.
With Doug Ford's plans right now for the province, or from the province down here in Niagara, we don't know if Welland will have 12 councillors or no councillors in the next little while.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that shakes down.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of those other issues that maybe we're facing over your 4 years before re-election, hopefully for the two of you. So attracting business, is that a big one for you, Lucas?
Huge. I think even more so than that is infill development. When you look at Welland, it's kind of like a donut right now. We've got, this beautiful outside perimeter. You've got the Weber Road area all the way around. You've got where the GE factory is, and it just kind of circles us. And then the core, like our downtown, has more of the vacant buildings and the empty properties and things like that. It's not totally the identity by any means, but that's where the majority of the abandoned buildings and vacant buildings are. So I would like to see us change the culture, and that happens with money. At the end of the day, that's what it is, right? If people are making money and they'll feel good about their community, and the better they feel about their community, the more they invest in it, and it's just, it snowballs. So I know what happened with us is on Niagara Street, there was Bogner, Evelyn, and my dad at the bakery, no other businesses. Fast forward 5 years, Salt Cave opens, Terrace opens, we open.
If you build it, they will come.
And
right?
it's starting to move. And now across the street from us, just maybe kind of diagonally, they're breaking ground. Like I saw them cleaning weeds on my way here. And that's a property that's been empty for as long as I've been in Welland. So things are moving. But the only way we can do that is by incentivizing people to create jobs, to open businesses.
And jobs are a big one, a huge
That's
one.
a huge thing. And everyone in Welland is obsessed with the big names, the huge amount of jobs at one time. And in my opinion, I think that's misguided. At the end of the day, if you look at it, the GE factory is a great thing for Welland, but that's 200 jobs.
That's right.
If you look at how many people, there's 311 businesses in the downtown area in Welland. They employ a heck of a lot more than 200 people. So I think if you were to look at proper tax breaks and incentive programs, like we have a CIP program that works incredibly well. We had over 100 people cash in on it in the past couple of years, and they're making facade improvements. They're getting new equipment. They're hiring new staff because of it. So all of these things are there to help people's businesses grow. And the more people that know about it, the better. The more businesses that open, the better. The more value in Welland, the more jobs, the more money floating around, the more things to do. It's all a plus. Having more people is great, but it doesn't solve the problem. It's just kind of adding to it, because all we're doing is increasing the tax rate, not the tax base.
Right. Let's move to an issue that was in the news about maybe a week or two ago when we had those cold temperatures, and right front page headlines on all 3 newspapers in the Niagara area, the 3 major newspapers. Homeless people in Welland directed to St. Catharines with bus tickets. bring some negative attention, in my opinion, to the city of Welland.
Yeah.
How do you address that situation that we don't have a homeless shelter for people who need it in Welland?
Right. So when we're looking at, I want to go back a couple steps to the amalgamation. So I kind of am interested to see what the review of the municipalities will look like, because those are challenges that need to be looked at from a big scale.
So we're talking back Doug Ford's review of what we're doing here in Niagara politically.
Yeah. So we have a number of municipalities. We have 12 here. And the solution is not just shipping off problems to other communities.
No.
We have to work together to find a solution. And I will commend the city. So we did get an email from Gary that day that City Hall was opened up to facilitate a number of people looking for shelter over those cold evenings. But then it comes down to the challenge. Okay, great. That's fantastic. How do we let these people that presumably don't have a cell phone, don't have any email access, how do we let them know that this is an option? That's a problem. So we have to figure out better ways to address this issue. And it's not, Welland's not, it's not a Welland issue. It's not a St. Catharines issue.
There's homelessness all around the
Everywhere.
region right now, and it's a huge issue.
It's a human issue, right? And we need to find a better way to manage the challenge. And it's not a problem. It's a challenge. And you could go across the entire world, and they all have this same issue. And obviously, over the past 100 years of social development, we haven't figured it out, and we have to figure out some sort of alternative that works for everyone.
If I could just quickly on that, I think ironically this is actually a provincial issue, because if you look at healthcare and education and all of these other different categories of well-being and health and future building, homelessness falls in that same category. In my opinion, I think that is a public health issue, because you've got people who are hurting, who are suffering on the streets, and that should actually be addressed at the provincial issue.
It links really closely to the mental health issues and drug addiction issues.
Because if you think about it, a hospital is the perfect place to have an emergency shelter, right? If you think about it, at the end of the day, it's very easy to think, well, if you're cold and sick, where do you go? To a hospital. So to have an emergency shelter in a hospital, I think would make a little more sense. But that's just all I have to add to that.
Well, we can bring the hospital up, right? The future of the Welland Hospital is something that you guys are going to be probably looking at, probably discussing with the province over your 4-year term as well. Yep. And what would you like to see happen with healthcare in Niagara and especially in Welland?
I received an interesting email from a friend of mine who showed me the survey results when they were doing the review of the hospitals in the Niagara region, and the one hospital they left out isn't a Niagara hospital. It's in Dunnville. It's in Haldimand County. Over 50% of their emergency room visits are from people in Niagara. And so I believe if they were to use those numbers in their survey results, saying that, well, actually a lot of people on this area of the Niagara region are outsourcing, if you want to use that term, that the new hospital that's being proposed for Niagara Falls would actually end up in Welland. Not saying that that's necessarily something we want or need. It's a decision of the people and of council and of higher tier governments as well. But at the end of the day, the priority needs to be affordable, accessible health care. If that means the hospital's not in Welland, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And that's going to sound horrible coming from me. But at the end of the day, like with the provincial review that Adam was talking about, if we lose our jobs because of this review, but it actually makes people's lives better, then good. Fine.
Absolutely.
That is our role. I mean, the whole point of us running for council is to make people's lives better, make it more affordable, offer more value for their dollar. And if we're getting in the way of that, then we're part of the problem. And so it's the same thing with the hospitals, right?
Adam, do you think that there's been a little bit less parochialism between the 12 municipalities in Niagara over the last 4 or 5 years or so, that maybe we can stomach some kind of amalgamation, some kind of chopping of some of these 120 some odd political positions?
Yeah, I think, coming from a newly elected councillor, this is a part-time job. I think that we can stomach it, but we also have to take hazard, because if you lose a lot of these positions, or if you amalgamate some of these positions, you're going to create a system that will take away the part-time aspect of it. So you're not going to get people like myself or Lucas or Brian Green or Graham Speck, who are of the
other two new councillors.
Yeah, we're all under 50 years old. Actually, we're all under 45 years old. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to, if you start pushing too much work, you're going to say, okay, the solution is let's just create counselors as a full-time position. You're going to lose people like me and Lucas and the other counselors. And you're also going to turn us into career politicians, which is not a good thing, I don't think. I think people have to get life experience and then jump into this stuff. Not to say that 24 isn't old enough, but Lucas has a very different perspective than I do. And I think we really have to be careful about cutting these councils in half just to facilitate some extra cost. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, less than 1% of what it costs to pay us as counselors, it's less than 1% of the city's budget.
And not only that, too, I'm glad you brought that up. It isn't a cost savings, because at the end of the day, you're taking, let's say you cut it in half.
Taking all those part-time wages and
making them full-time. And not only that,
that's been my argument about this whole thing right from the beginning.
Yeah. You look at Toronto and that area, yes, they cut the council, but they actually have more administration staff and all that to help, because there's a lot of people. If you break it down, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people each they look over. We look over 10,000, maybe. Some of us less than 10,000 people. So.
Ward system in Welland, some towns have moved away from that ward system, Niagara Falls being one of those, running at large. Did the ward system help you, Lucas?
I think the ward system is good for getting new people elected, because it becomes less, it's always a popularity contest, but it's less of that, because at the at-large system in Niagara Falls, and I'm friends with some of these people, but you got people like Mike Strange, like this guy is a monster in Niagara Falls. Like everyone knows him, right? So that's one spot gone. So that leaves only 7 spots left. And then you go down the list and there's a few more people on there that are unmovable, right? From a popularity perspective, right? So it leaves very little chance for new people. And if you look in Niagara Falls, only 2 new people got elected. Whereas Welland, we have, I say 4.5, because Claudette got in the last year and then got reelected this year. But if you look at it that way, there's a good chance to get in. But what I have to say, because I can't stand it every time I hear it, is when we're at council meetings and say, well, when I was knocking on doors and talking to constituents in Ward 2 and Ward 3, who cares? We just take the emails from those people. That's it. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we take emails and we have to look out for them. But at the end of the day, our job is the responsibility of Welland as a whole. We cannot look at a ward for ward basis, or we'll never get anything done. And I think that's why in the past, and not the last council, but just over the whole history of Welland councils, that's what slows people down in the ward system, is that because they feel some sort of responsibility that, well, we can't give these guys the water sewers because our people didn't get them yet. Well, if everyone votes no, no one's getting them. So we have to be strategic. We have to see what's going to benefit more people.
Adam, your ward, Niagara College and rental issues, that was a big one when you were knocking on doors?
Yeah, not so much. There's a subcommittee of the city of Welland. It's the Town and Gown Committee. So it's a joint effort between the college and the city. And if they've tackled a lot of those problems, it's going to be a problem no matter what. But they really work closely together to ensure that these issues are dealt with swiftly. But it is a constant problem. Every student now has a car, and parking's an issue. But it has to be managed. And the college is a big employer of Welland residents. My wife works at Niagara College, so it is a challenge. But I think
it drives a lot of money into the economy. It drives a lot
of money into the economy, and I know people don't like the rental market, but people are making money off that. That's small business at its best, right? So there's challenges, but with every challenge, there is opportunities to fix it. So I think it's so long as we give it the attention that it deserves, I think it's a manageable issue.
Gentlemen, we've gone way over time today. I could probably stay in here with you guys for another hour or so and enjoy this conversation. It's been great. But Adam, we'll start with you. Give me, let's say, your top 4 priorities for this term for Adam Moote in Welland.
Attraction, retention strategy to keep young people in Welland. Economic development, always a big thing. Environmental issues. We have a beautiful canal. We cannot afford to destroy it by polluting our waters with whatever it may be, gasoline, road salt. I mean, the list goes on and on. And the amalgamation. I love to see what the recommendations are out of it. And we're all going to get interviewed apparently. So I'm happy to provide the feedback.
Lucas, same question for you. Your top 4 priorities?
Unfair, because I had some time to think about it while he was answering it, but I would say probably tourism is my number 1. Not the shoddy Las Vegas version of tourism, but we're missing out on that big time. If you were to pick up the Welland Canal and drop it in any municipality, whether it's neighboring or further off, they'll make money. I think we're kind of missing the boat on that, pun intended. But then also jobs are the next thing, not just industry. I think we need to focus on mom and pop, opening up small business. The arts is a big thing. Nothing wrong with sports, but got to share some room on the field. And the last thing I think would be culture. You know, it's making people feel good about Welland again. I remember coming from Niagara Falls, is where I'm from originally. I was living half in Niagara Falls and half in Welland, and I wouldn't tell people I was a Wellander because I was embarrassed. You know, you hear all the stereotypes, welfare, cigarettes, and all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's changed, and I actually think it's almost completely gone, especially if you go up East Main. You're not seeing the 16-year-old in pajama pants using her kid as an ashtray anymore. You know, that's gone. So I think we need to show the rest of the region that we're proud and that we have something to offer. And if we can do that, the rest of it is just going to fall in suit.
Civic pride.
That's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've been with Adam Moote and Lucas Spinosa, new counselors in the city of Welland. My name is Mike Balsom. You've been watching Open Mic on Giant TV. Thanks for joining us.